Good evening. I am Mayor Donald T. Lopez of the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque. I want to welcome everyone to our Board of Trustees regular meeting. It is an in-person meeting streamed on the village website, YouTube channel, and Facebook page. The time is 7 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Village Hall Chambers. Please be mindful that this will be streamed on the village website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to stand, and Village Clerk Danielle Cedillo Molina will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will now call the roll. Trustee Rael. Here. Trustee Lewis. Here. Trustee Pacheco.
Here.
Trustee Riccabini. Here. Thank you. Item 3, is the approval of the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
Thank you. Need a second.
Second.
I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccabini.
Yes.
Thank you. It is now item 4, public comment period. Participants may address the Board of Trustees to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Submitted written comments that were sent to the clerk prior to the meeting will now be read. I understand there are none. Participants wishing to speak that registered with the clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting will be provided an opportunity to speak within the allotted 3-minute time limit. Danielle, I understand we do have public comment.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Yes, we have Veronica Arzate with the Hispano Chamber of Commerce, and I apologize if I ruined your last name.
Veronica,
Thank you. You can go ahead and approach the podium and introduce yourself.
state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lopez and member of Los Ranchos Trustees Board. Thank you so much for having us. So my name again is Veronica Arzate, and I am the program director with the Hispanic Chamber. We are in charge of doing outreach and education for BYNM, who is the health insurance marketplace for New Mexicans. Right now, we have a lot of people in our communities who are in between jobs because of the pandemic, and they don't have health insurance. So it is very, very important that we share the information, the resources that we have available. I have brochures and my business cards out the door on the table, so please feel free to get one on your way out and reach out to me. So what we do is we do not sell health insurance. What the BYNM, the Health Insurance Exchange, does is there's a lot of financial assistance and subsidies that are coming through the federal government. We all have heard about the American Rescue Plan and the COVID relief bill, but we don't quite relate that that funding also impacts access to healthcare for New Mexicans. So it's very, very important that we let people know, everybody that doesn't have health insurance, is like, make sure you reach out to us. We'll connect you with an expert. The appointments are completely free. They can do them online, on the phone, or in person, whatever is most comfortable for people in our communities. And we will guide them into how they can enroll into a health insurance plan that is good for them, for their families, and most importantly, that is affordable, because the subsidies are going to be really lowering those premiums. Right now, 4 out of 5 New Mexicans qualify for $0 a month. That's super, super affordable, but if they don't know about it, they cannot take advantage. So it's crucial. Right now, we're in a period of open enrollment. It's a special, and it will be ending on August 15th. So we want to make sure everybody here has an opportunity to take a look and see if this is the right thing for them and for their families. So thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to ask the question, is there anyone else who wishes to speak that did not register prior to the meeting? If so, please approach the podium. We don't have anybody. So we're going to move to item 5, presentations. There are none. Item 6 is the consent agenda. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Need a second?
I second.
Let me back up. Item 6A are the minutes of the June 9th, 2021 regular meeting. Is your motion to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, I need a second to approve the minutes.
I make a second to approve the minutes.
Is there any discussion or revisions to the minutes? Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccabini. Thank you. We now come to departmental reports. The departmental reports are included in the packet and reflect all the activities listed. If the governing body has questions for staff regarding the reports, we will have each trustee ask all of their questions before we move to the next trustee. So we have items 7A through F. Mayor's report, administrator's report, Agri-Nature Center manager report, planning and zoning director's report. Now, the project manager is not here tonight, but Ann Simon could answer questions on that, Administrator Simon, if there are. And then we have Fred Radosevich, our public safety liaison in the back of the room. And he's back there for a reason. And so, Trustee Rael, do you have any questions or comments on the departmental reports?
I just have one correction. On page 19 of 158, there's a typo in including is misspelled. It should be under the Lavender Festival. Excuse me. It should be included, INC, and it's IND. That's all I have.
Okay. Trustee Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question is for Administrator Simon. Good evening, Ann. I didn't see anything in your report. Where are we at? We talked last month about refinancing our bonds. What has taken place since last meeting?
Thank you, Mayor and Trustee Lewis. We did have a meeting with RBC Capital about that very issue, and we will be bringing you a schedule in the next meeting.
Okay,
We
Great.
do intend to move forward with a refunding.
great, thank you. My next question is for Joshua. I wondered if you could just talk a little bit more. It's a one-line item, but I think it's pretty exceptional, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the wash and pack shipping containers? Just give us a little more detail on them.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Trustee Lewis. So back when Fergus was the Ag Program Manager, he was able to get a hold of a grant that turned a shipping container into a wash station and then a trailer into a refrigeration unit to be used by farmers in the area. And so now that we're working on getting that project finished up, and now we're getting it online on the website so that farmers in the area, if they want to use it, can get either a season pass to use the shipping container or to use the wash station and packaging station for the whole year, or they can do it hourly, and they can sign up for that and pay and come and use it whenever they like during the week so that they can bring their produce, get it washed, dried, packed, and off to market. So that's what we're working on with that.
Can you tell us a little bit about the interior workings of the container?
Yeah, so it starts outside. There's an area to take your vegetables and spray them off into some basins that feed out into a storage container so that we can reuse the water. And then you bring them inside. We have a bubbler machine that you put your vegetables in. It bubbles and washes them and soaks them. Then we have a spinner, which is electric, a large spinner to help dry them. And then you can put them onto a screen that has fans above and below it to dry off all the vegetables. And then we have a packaging station, a table where you can bag everything and then bring it right back outside, which is where the trailer is backed up to take it to wherever you want. So, yeah.
So how big, I mean, when you talk about we have these stations, is it for a few pieces of produce or how big is it? I'm just trying to picture.
Yeah, so the shipping container is like a standard shipping container for on a train. So the sinks are these stainless steel sinks. They're probably, the one outside is probably about 6 feet wide and 2 feet deep.
Wow.
And inside, it's the size of a water trough, a feed water trough. So that's what was used in there. And then it was outfitted like a sink. And so then you can go over and it's about a 5-gallon size spinner. And then we have the drying tables with the fans, and that's about 6 feet wide and 3 feet deep, the netting there. So the screen.
Fascinating, thank you.
And Mayor and Trustee Lewis, if I could add, all of this equipment was paid for with a grant from the Albuquerque Community Foundation. And we had initially called it the Farm in a Box project. So you may have heard that term, and now it's really all finished, and it's a wash and pack station.
How is it being received, or is it too early yet?
It's too early. We've been working with Kiko and some of the staff to try to get it online so that people can pay online, schedule on the website, so that there's no conflicts on the calendar with multiple people using it at the same time. And once I know the new website is launching, and so we've been waiting for that to launch, and so then we'll be able to put it out into the public and get it in use. We've had a couple inquiries already to use it, so we're hoping that it'll be something that will be used by the community. So
Sounds fantastic. Thank you, Joshua.
Yep.
I have no more questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Trustee Lewis. Trustee Pacheco.
I do, thank you, Mayor. This first one is for you with regard to the rescue funds we're receiving. Is there any clarification as to how this money can be spent?
There is, and I'm going to let Administrator Simon describe the process that we're going to be following. Go ahead, Administrator Simon.
Thank you, Mayor. Trustee Pacheco, we are trying to schedule a special workshop. I believe we have August 25th slated as a placeholder for a conversation about items that we would like for you all to consider funding with this rescue money. We do have some very clear guidelines that were published in the Federal Register, and a number of Q&A fact sheets that have come out since then. So we have some pretty clear guidance on how we can spend the money.
Okay, so we'll know more, obviously, on the 25th.
Yes.
Right.
Awesome. Okay. The next question is for Joshua. Sorry to have you go so far and come back. So, super excited to hear about the composting. I remember doing it as a kid with my grandma. What I was wondering is if there's any possibility that you might do a short article in the Village Vision. Obviously, people are not going to be coming, residents are not going to be coming every day to drop off their kitchen waste. What's the best way to store that? You know, I think it'd be good for our community to know how we could store it for a week and maybe just make one trip a week.
yeah, thank you, Mayor and Trustee Pacheco. We have a drop-off location there at the Agri-Nature Center, and hopefully we can get people to, the idea is, since we don't have curbside pickup or anything like that, we're hoping that we can get people who are interested to save it and bring it by. Now, in my household, we always save our compost, so we have a covered little container on the counter that we put it in, and then when that fills up, we take it into a covered 5-gallon bucket outside. And it'll last that way for a week, 2 weeks. And as long as it's covered, you don't have to worry about flies gathering and those kind of things. So if you have an enclosed bucket, then that should be fine. You can then bring your bucket whenever is convenient and drop it off. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, there again, hopefully you can do something in the Village Vision. I think that would be a great, just a little snippet of information for residents to know. We used to keep it in a coffee can, but you don't buy coffee
That
in a
works
can
too.
anymore,
Yeah,
hardly.
that
So,
works too. Anything covered, yeah. And we're putting an announcement in the Village Vision that's coming out to talk about that this is going to be available. But it's a great idea to do a full, I think a full article on composting and even how to do it at your own home and stuff like that. Because we want to promote composting. If you bring it to us, great, we'll compost it. But if you want to do it on your own for your own garden, giving the know-how so that people can start that at their own place.
great, thank you. And before you go, the fall gourd and pumpkin patch, is that going to be at the Agri-Nature Center?
It's planted, yeah. So we have we planted some winter gourds and also some pumpkins, and we're in the planning process of a fall kind of field day harvest festival that will be sometime in October, hopefully. So that was planting that was hopefully was part of that, so that when we have the harvest festival, that kids can also pick pumpkins and do carvings and those kind of things. So yeah.
Outstanding, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, next one is for Director Justice. Have we received any formal application, and this is, sorry, in regard to the short-term rentals? Just curious to know if we've received any applications and kind of what the feedback's been.
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, Trustees, so we haven't received any applications so far. Our website was updated at the beginning of July to have the application forms and the new process available. However, at this point, we're only receiving inquiries about interest. There's a couple folks who want to make sure that they get in under that 65 permit cap. So they're trying to find out whether they have to have the buildings built first, whether they have to have a conditional use permit for their guest house yet before they can apply for their bed and breakfast permit. At this point, nobody has officially applied, but we plan on sending out notice letters at the end of July to all of the unregistered short-term rentals and hopefully get them registered by the end of this year.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, next one, this was, or is for Maria, and I know she's not here tonight, so I will direct this to you. Anne, I know that there was a transportation project fund meeting held on July 9th, I believe. Do you know how that meeting went?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I presented at that. Thank you, Mayor, Trustee Pacheco. We had to pitch our project to District 3 representatives, including the Commissioner for District 3. And we will be evaluated. I believe they will be giving us notification in about a week or so. So it'll be a fast turnaround. And that is for about $500,000 of final design money for the second half of 4th Street.
Okay, great, thank you. And with regard to the 2019 legislative appropriation, it says in parentheses that there is $2,500 for art in public places. What does that kind of entail?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Trustee Pacheco. In every capital outlay, there is a 10% set aside so that there can be a public arts component to whatever project is funded through capital outlay. We have received a number of pieces of artwork. In fact, there's a beautiful piece that was just hung this summer that came from the last tranche.
Okay.
And it's over at the Agri-Nature Center, and I encourage you to go visit.
Okay, so that's just kind of put out to, notification is put out to the public, obviously, and we get applications and then decide?
We don't vet it as much as they give us a list of pieces of art that have been approved, and we select among a list of pieces.
Okay,
From
thank you.
paintings to sculptures.
Thank you. Okay, next question is with regard to the Village Center project. I know that, again, that there was a meeting on July 7th, just kind of curious where things are at this point.
Yes, we are very excited. It looks like the developer, Palindrome, will be applying in the second round of funding from New Mexico Finance Authority. And it's a non-competitive application, so it's very likely that he will get funding. He still plans to break ground in January. And I leave it to Director Justice to add anything that I missed.
Yes, they also have submitted a draft master plan for the site that we're reviewing at this point. And also we asked them for a sign possibly at the intersection of 4th and Osuna to kind of show people what it's going to look like. It's a standard for development in general. And so we're hoping to get that up within the next couple of months too.
Great, moving along. Thank you. Fred, just one last question I have for you with regard to the growers market and some issues with COVID. Just kind of curious what those issues are at this point.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustee Pacheco, trustees. What those are, as the rapidly changing occupancy levels were going on, I was speaking with Colleen probably every week to make sure that they were in compliance with, at that time, of all the different changes in the occupancy, because in June, May and June, they were changing weekly, and that's what that was about.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
That's all I have, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pacheco. Trustee Riccobene.
Just a comment and a hello. Really looking forward, Joshua, to new things at the Agri-Nature Center. You got a lot of funding, you got a great staff, you got a great mayor backing you up, and just all the best to you. No further questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Riccobene. Item 8 now is financial business. 8A is discussion and approval of the cash report for June 2021. Treasurer Will Fisher.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Before you is the cash report for June 30th, 2021. The ending cash balance as of June 30th, 2021 is $7,191,601.83, which is an increase of $150,104.76 for the month, which is a year-to-date excess of revenues over expenditures of $2,013,321.07. A few unusual and significant items, but Ms. Tammy can speak to those.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. The unusual and significant items that we have listed this month are for subscriptions and memberships, $4,827.75 for archive social membership. We also have a credit that is in one of our expenditures for credit and insurance premium for an employee who is no longer with us. We also have capital expenditures in building and structures in the amount of $14,871.53 for 2 new air conditioner units at Village Hall. And the last 2 items, the first one is a total of $29,150 in capital expenditures in roadways, bridges, and culverts. $24,150 of that was for new speed boards, 3 new speed boards that will be located around the village, and $5,000 for a new radius mower at the Ag Center. And the last item is capital expenditures in the amount of $4,233.22 for supplies to finish the infiltrators that we've been doing throughout the year.
Thank you, Tammy. Before we get to questions and discussion about the cash report, I need a motion.
I move approval of the cash report.
I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions of either Treasurer Will Fisher or CFO Tammy Silva on the cash report?
I have some questions on the check register.
Sure.
Okay. First one is on page 71 of 158. There's a payment of $1,211.75 to Boot Barn invoices for maintenance and ag department. Could you give us a little more information as to what that is?
Yes, Mayor Trustee Rael. What that is for safety equipment for boots and work pants and shirts for the employees who are maintenance and ag employees who are out in the field, to provide them with steel-toed boots or safety shoes that they can wear out in the field, as well as work pants and work shirts. And so several of our employees went and got new items. I believe those were for Mark, Derek, and that might have been the only two.
I think Sabrina got something.
Oh, yes, thank you so much, Mayor, and Sabrina also.
Okay. Oh, and another one on the, see on page 72, there's a payment to Direct Diesel West. And are you referring to the color of the diesel fuel that has to be colored in order for farm equipment?
Yes, Mayor Trustee Lewis, that is the dyed diesel that's for farm equipment, so that is a misspelling in the word dyed.
Okay. And one more. On page 72 also, payment to Highway Supply for blue paint 10-gallon bucket. What is that?
It is for, sorry, another misspelling, it's for paint, blue paint that the maintenance department needed for one of their projects.
Okay. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the governing body on the cash report?
I have one comment. Let me find it here. On page 43,
43?
the year-to-date results. I would just like to congratulate you, Mayor, and Administrator Simon, and everybody with the village. It's a great job that you guys came in. It just was an excellent job for what this last year was, and all the unexpected things that came up, and I just want to congratulate everybody with the village staff for doing a great job.
To follow up on that very quickly, I think that our staff has really taken the bull by the horns, and they've done a wonderful job. We've saved, money where we felt it had to be saved, but we've also expended money where it had to be expended. And luckily, we have significant revenue, and obviously, we've got rescue money that's coming in to supplement for the next 3 or so years. So I'm pretty happy where we are financially. I'll say that.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
To all of you. I have no more questions.
Okay. Any other questions on the cash report from the governing body? Okay, I'm going to call for the question. Call for the vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Item B, discussion and approval of resolution number 2021-07-01, 2021 final quarter financial report year ending June 30th, 2021. CFO Tammy Silva.
Mayor Trustees, what you have before you is the resolution for the 2021 final quarter for the financial reporting. This is a state requirement. We are required to approve the final report at June 30th, 2021, and submit that to LGBMS and the state budget. So this is the resolution you have before you. With the supporting document, you will note that the cash balances match to our cash balance in the cash report. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Tammy. Before we get to any discussion or questions, I do need a motion.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2021-07-01.
I'll second.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions or discussion about this?
I have one.
Go ahead.
On page 77, that the form you have there, it refers to the municipality as village of, and it just, of loss, it just drops the Is that something that it's important to change, or because it's referred to in other places correctly?
Yes, Mayor Trustee Ryle, this is actually a state form that they provide to us, and those cells are locked. So when I submit it, it is actually in Excel format, and they can read the whole item. However, I don't have the ability to move it over to be read, and I can't adjust any of those upper columns. So unfortunately, on this one, we cannot adjust it. But on the one that is being submitted into the state budget, it is in Excel, and they can see the full name.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, any other discussion or questions about this item? Okay, if none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote. Trustee Ryle?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni?
Yes.
Move to item C, discussion and approval of resolution number 2021-07-02, budget revisions FY 2021, 2020/2021. CFO Tammy Silva.
Mayor, trustees, before you is Resolution 2021-07-02 for the budget revisions for the fiscal year 2021. And this is another state requirement that we are required to complete and pass through the board for any budget revisions we have at the end of the year. And with the support document that is provided to you, you will see that there are two budget revisions, and the two are both transfers. The first one is for our GO Bond Series 2007, and the first one is transferring $29,037.66 from our GO Bond Reserve into our GO Bond, and that is to cover the shortage that we have from property tax that was received. We take it out of our reserve, whatever it is, to zero out the account at the end of the year. And the second one that we have is a transfer from our general fund of $3,807.33 into our 211 fund, which is our law enforcement protection fund. And this is just to also zero out that fund and meet our obligation to pay for expenses that are in the MOU.
Thank you, Tammy. Before we get into discussion or questions on this item, I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion for CFO Tammy Silva regarding this item, this resolution? Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote. Trustee Ryle?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni?
Yes.
Thank you. Item D, discussion and approval of resolution number 2021-07-03, budget adoption for fiscal year 2021/2022. Administrator Simon.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Before you is the final budget for fiscal year 2022. It is not that much different from the interim budget that you passed in May, but we were able to make some adjustments. Our GRT came in a lot higher than we thought, and we ended the year quite well. We were able to adjust our revenue projection up slightly. You will see an overall, on page 83, an overall decrease in the revenue of 12% overall. But for GRT, we are projecting 8% below fiscal year 20. We use fiscal year 20 as a comparison year because fiscal year 21 was a pandemic year. In the expenditure side, you will see that we are 11% over the last fiscal year, but again, that is because our GRT came in higher. We are finishing in all funds with a budget of total expenditure of $5.3 million. That's $109,000 over the interim budget that you passed in May. And we have added a few notable items in the budget per your suggestion to add needed services for the village, one of which, a large item, is the barn parking lot. which over the last month has flooded several times, and this has been a chronic problem. And given the increased revenue, we are hoping to tackle that problem this year, and that's a $120,000 increase over the interim budget. Other items are supplies that we are trying to fill based on the robbery that occurred earlier in the year, some capital equipment, the camera equipment that you see here tonight, and planning for more infrastructure of our IT system and our backbone. So I stand for questions.
Thank you, Administrator Simon. Before we get to discussion and questions about the budget, I need a motion.
Mayor, may I just step in?
Sure, go right ahead.
I wanted to mention that before you is a new page, the last page of the budget. There was an error, and I wanted to make sure you had that. The last page did not include the Rescue Act money. It was in the complete total, so nothing changed throughout the rest of the budget, but that last page did not have it totaling the 1.5 million Rescue Act that we are going to receive. So I wanted to provide you with that change so you could see the updated number.
Thank you, Tammy, and could you remind us that is on page 35 of 35?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, before we get to any questions about the budget or discussion, I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-07-03.
Need a second? Thank you. Now, is there any discussion or questions from our staff about the budget? Go ahead.
Mr. Simon, thank you. First of all, wonderful job on this. On the barn parking lot, is that discretionary funds we're going to be spending on that, or would that be infrastructure funds that we've been appropriated?
So, Mayor, Trustee Riccobene, and Tammy can help me with this. We are going to budget it out of the general fund, but it has to come out of our capital.
Yes.
Correct?
Mayor, Trustee Riccobene, trustees, it will be coming out of the capital general fund. As of right now, that's where we have it budgeted.
Because of the rules of the infrastructure?
Yes, so it is a capital expenditure because it is such a large amount. It's about $20,000. And so anything over $5,000 that's related to infrastructure or other capital assets will be capitalized. That's why it is in the capital asset fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from the governing body about our budget?
I have a question. So given this sheet that you've given us, the Rescue Act funds, I'm a little confused. Are they all coming at one time or over 3 years?
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, so we will receive the Rescue Act funds in 2 allotments. The first one we should receive sometime this month, and then we are expected to receive the second allotment of June of 2022. So both pieces we should have within this fiscal year. And then we must expend within the next 3 years.
Okay. And then I'm comfortable that you all have done a great job and that I like your budget being based off of 2019 and looking at those numbers. I have a little concern over this budget in that expenditures without the Rescue Act are higher than revenues. And I just sort of want to put that on the record that, you know, I think this is wonderful that we're getting this Rescue Act money, but I really want us to remember that and caution us when we look at the budget in mid-year and also as we set the budget for next year. So those were my only comments.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the governing body about the budget? Okay, being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobene.
Yes.
Now we move on to item 9, which is public hearings. There are none. Item 10 is old business. There are none. Item 11, announcements. There are none. New business, item 12, pursuant to section 3-11-6A, parentheses 1, NMSA 1978, subject to the approval of a majority of all members of the governing body, the mayor shall submit the names of employees to the Board of Trustees for confirmation. These are new employees. One is Ramona Carrillo, Maintenance Worker 1, and number 2 is Thomas Sanchez, Code Enforcement Officer, part-time. Administrator Simon.
Mayor, trustees, yes, we're very excited to finally round out our employees. We have Ramona Carrillo, who is fantastic. She's been here for a couple of weeks now, and she's fitting right in. She's a really hard worker, and we're really lucky to have her. She has a landscaping background, so we're really excited to have her helping us out up on 4th Street, and she's really one of these people who rolls up her sleeves and does whatever we ask. Thomas Sanchez came to us. He's a retired military, very excited about working for the village. He was here working for the election and was here for a month running the Conservancy District election, and fell in love with our community. And so we're really lucky to have him as our part-time code enforcement officer.
I'll add one comment. I've had, some discussion with each of these employees, and I'm extremely impressed with each one of them. They are hard workers. They want to do a good job. And I think we're extremely lucky to find employees like this who are in fact willing to work and come to our village and perhaps stay with us for a while. So I'm very, very pleased with these two individuals. So thank you, Administrator Simon. Before we get into any discussion about it, I need a motion.
I move approval.
Need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions from the governing body about these two employees? Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. Item B, discussion and approval to adopt ordinance number 279, amending application and approval process for home occupation permits to allow home occupations in commercial and mixed-use zones to be approved without public notice, to allow de minimis home occupations to be approved without public notice, amending the conditions of approval for de minimis home occupations. Director Tiffany Justice.
Mayor, trustees, this is the same ordinance that was before you last month for advertisement. Now we're hoping to adopt this. And as the mayor mentioned, this is to add consistency with accessory buildings for de minimis home occupations. This removes the public notice requirements for de minimis home occupations since they essentially create no impact on the neighborhood since there's no traffic increase, there's no signage, there's no real way to tell that there's a business being operated there. And this also removes the public notice requirement for mixed use and commercial zones, C1, BC, and GD. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director Justice. Before we get into any questions or discussion, I need a motion.
Move approval of ordinance 279.
Need a second.
Second.
Thank you. At this time, is there any discussion from the governing body about this? Okay, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please go to the podium, state your name and address, continue as needed. Okay, I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. Item C, discussion and approval of resolution number 2021-07-04, participation in local government road fund program administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. Ms. Rinaldi is not here this evening because she's ill, so Administrator Simon is going to make this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Trustees, you may recall 2 years ago, we put money in the budget for a 2575 match on a cooperative road fund that is a New Mexico Department of Transportation program. And it's taken a while. It takes 2 years to get those programs funded and fully certified and implemented. But we will finally be striping and crack sealing the roads in that first tranche of funding. Because it was so successful, we are going for a second tranche. So we have a total project cost of $93,000. And that is $70,000 from the New Mexico Department of Transportation, $23,000 of local match, which you budgeted last fiscal year. Stand for questions.
Thank you. Before we get to discussion and questions from the governing body, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, Resolution 2021-07-04.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion from the governing body about this item? Being none, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please go to the podium, state your name and address. There's none. Call for the question, call for the vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
We now move on to item D, discussion and approval of resolution number 2021-07-05. First amendment to the residential and commercial solid waste and recycling collection services license between Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Waste Management of New Mexico, Inc. So I'd like for Administrator Simon and Attorney Nan Winter to make this presentation. Go ahead, Administrator.
Thank you.
Simon.
Mayor, trustees. This is a resolution approving an amendment to our contract with Waste Management. In the contract initially, we asked that Waste Management provide us in a franchise fee the equivalent amount of taxation that would have been charged had they paid their taxes for the services rendered in Los Ranchos. Because their company is based in Rio Rancho, they gave us the tax pass-through as a franchise fee. A new ruling in the state of New Mexico requires that services that are rendered in a community, the taxation stays in that community. And I'm sure that Attorney Winter can be much more articulate about this. But the change then in our contract is to eliminate the franchise pass-through language and establish that the gross receipts taxes stay in the village directly based on the service provided.
Attorney Nan Winter, do you want to
Do you
add
have anything
anything
to
to
add?
that?
Yes, Mayor, trustees, just to clarify, so this was a statute that passed in 2019, and it was effective July 1 of 2021. So, and what it did is it requires that those performing services in the village have to report their income in the village. That wasn't always true, which is why your contract with the solid waste provider sort of gave you a kickback of the gross receipts tax he wasn't reporting here. So the franchise fee stays the same, but there is no longer this extra kick related to the gross receipts tax distribution that you weren't getting. Now we're just saying you will comply with the law, and I think I put language in here that he warrants and represents that from this point forward, he's going to report his income or report his revenue here in the village. So very simple amendment. There are probably at least 3 or 4 other amendments that we'll be presenting to you next month related to this contract. But this one had a priority because of the July 1 effective date.
Thank you. Before we get to discussion and questions from the governing body, I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 2021-07-05.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion or questions from the governing body on this item? Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please go to the podium, state your name and address. There isn't. I'm going to call for the question. Call for the vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's move on to item E. Discussion only, Residential Development Pilot Project Ordinance. Director Tiffany Justice.
Mayor, trustees, So as suggested by the 2035 master plan, to explore alternative forms of residential development, a pilot project might be explored by the village. So that's something that we're planning to do right now. We're focusing this pilot project on cluster housing for now, since this is something that the village has had in the past, and this is also specifically mentioned in the master plan in a couple different areas, and also during some of the master plan meetings. This was mentioned in other areas like agriculture. So before we proceed with drafting an ordinance, we have a set of questions for the board on some key areas of a cluster housing project. These are typical characteristics of cluster housing projects. Typically, some kind of density bonus, some kind of open space requirement, and then within that, some specifics that we may want to get feedback on before drafting an ordinance. And so with these questions are some background information, an analysis on the options that are presented, just for context. These are on the pages after the questions to consider. I'm not going to go through this information, but I will stand for questions on that. And given how broad some of these questions are, the board is also welcome to reach out to me individually with their answers for tonight's meeting, and also just to give you guys time to consider these questions and kind of go the different routes. So I know that was pretty brief, but I do stand for any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Director Justice. If the governing body has questions for Director Justice, I will have each trustee ask all their questions before we move on to the next trustee. Trustee Rael.
I have a question, excuse me, of the attorney, and regarding the public access to this properties for developers. If we say that we allow public access to their property, that would not be a taking?
Mayor, Trustee Rael, when you say access, you mean for surveying, or what kind of access are you speaking to?
Well, the way this is written, or the way I understand it, is if we have, for instance, cluster housing, and the properties around it would be a percentage of the total property, like open space, or a property that could be used for parks or whatever. And if the village says you must allow public access, is that not a taking?
Trustee, I think I have to better understand the facts of what are being proposed in here with respect to the open space. I am not aware of any litigation or case law surrounding or addressing your question in particular, but let me take a look at it and report back to you next month on it.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, any more questions?
What I did is I answered the 3 questions or 4 questions that are on page 151 that Tiffany asked of us, I guess. And I don't know if anybody else did it that way, but I would, regarding question 1, I think we should allow 20% density, or rather increase from 20% to 25%. On question 2, I believe the village goals should be all of the above, or all open space, parks, and natural undeveloped lands and agricultural lands. Should be all the above. On question 3, if feasible, I think we should allow 40% open space, and that would be a 10% increase from what is allowed presently. And then on question 4, that's why I asked our attorney about this question, because it seems to me that we should only allow access if it's property that's owned or managed by the village. But I may be, we'll wait for your answer and see if, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Rael. Trustee Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'd like to start with, these are pretty broad questions. And I sort of proposed to all my fellow trustees that, I think we start with, what is the goal? What is our goal? with this. And, you know, obviously I have down it's open space preservation, a new type of affordable housing for people, residents that want to downsize as well as families, to broaden the diversity of the village as well as protecting our schools, et cetera. So my questions are more with some general, you know, you start with what kind of density bonus. Can you just give us a little more detail? I mean, let's talk about that a little bit and just what that issue is and what we're looking at and what we're talking about. Because I personally don't have anything to peg it to say, oh, let's take it from 20% to 30%. I don't know if that's good or bad or not. And so I'm going to ask you a number of general questions to go into more detail on each of these, if you would please. So I'd like to start with just talking about the density bonus a little bit more in general.
Yes, so Mayor, Trustee Lewis, trustees, so.
And if you can speak up a little louder.
Sorry.
Tiffany.
So a density bonus is something that is typical of cluster housing development concepts in general. So most of the time, a developer will get an incentive, hence a density bonus, for providing and setting aside a set amount of open space. So the incentive for setting aside that open space is in exchange, you get a density bonus. As well as, in some cases, you know, smaller lot sizes, irregular lot sizes, that kind of thing. And so there's three different ways that we can approach the density bonus aspect of cluster housing. The first is no density bonus. The village has actually done cluster housing before in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And our first ordinance actually was this. There was no density bonus. All it did was allow smaller lot sizes with the same dwelling unit per acre allowance. And so the next form of density bonus is something that's more common. That's a dwelling unit-based density bonus. So our zoning, for example, A1 is 1 house per 1 acre. And so we could increase that to say 2 houses per 1 acre or, you know, 1.5 houses per acre. The idea being that the more land you can set aside, the better your bonus will be because you'll have like a whole number. This is actually the second version of the cluster housing ordinance that the village had. And in 1995, we did have that instead of 1 house per acre, you were allowed 1.5 houses per acre with this density bonus. And so the third approach is something that we haven't done before. And this is because the floor area ratio didn't necessarily exist at the time of these ordinances. But we do have a floor area ratio, and it limits the amount of built square footage you can have on a property based on the lot size. This is not necessarily related to zoning. So a 1 acre lot will have, we have a 20% floor area ratio, so 20% of a lot, about 8,600 square feet of buildable square footage for the entire lot. So that includes the house and any accessory buildings like garages or barns. And so the idea with this density bonus is that either we would have the same floor area ratio of 20%, and instead of necessarily limiting that to 1 house that can build up to 8,600 square feet, you can build as many houses as you can, but you have to have that within the 8,600 square feet. So the idea is that you get a higher density bonus if you build smaller houses. And so it's kind of, it leaves a little bit of more flexibility for the developer to be able to say, well, the market wants bigger houses, so I'll deal with a lower density bonus instead of having a lot of smaller houses. And the kind of question within that density bonus and the floor area ratio is, well, do we want to stick with 20%? Would we want to increase to 25, 30, that kind of thing? Just in general, we limit the amount of permeable area on a lot to 60%. So at most, the most built area you can have on a property is 40%. And our floor area ratio right now is 20%. So there's an extra 20% for, you know, patios, porches, driveways, sidewalks, that kind of thing. And so just, I guess, for context and comparison, for 1 acre, you get about 8,600 square feet with a 20% floor area ratio. With a 25% floor area ratio, you get 10,900 square feet. And then with a 30% floor area ratio, you get 13,000 square feet. So that's what I mean by, like, I guess, the different types of density bonuses that you can have with a cluster housing ordinance.
So I have a couple questions then. So first of all, I want to make sure I understand, and I'm going to round it up just to make it easy. So if you have 5 acres, generally, you could have 50,000 square feet under roof in that 5 acres. So with a density bonus of, say, 20%, then you could have 60,000 square feet under roof in any number of houses, on any number of lots. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
So Trustee Lewis, Mayor, Trustees, actually it's a little bit different. The density bonus, actually, if we kept the 20% floor area ratio, there wouldn't be any increase. You would be allowed that 50,000 square feet.
Okay.
And then if we upped that to 25% of a floor area ratio, you would get a little bit more based on that.
Okay. And so do we have any considerations, because part of what we're trying to do is get some more density and more affordable housing. So would we put a maximum square footage on this so that somebody can't come in and say, I've got the opportunity to build 50,000 square feet and I'm going to build, I'm only going to build 6 houses, but they're going to be very big. So do we want to put some kind of maximum that says they cannot exceed 3,200 square feet or 3,000 square feet, so that we get what we want to accomplish by doing this? And then if you could, when you say 60% permeability requirement, is that including infrastructure? So how does so a developer comes in and he's already got to put 20% of the property in infrastructure, in roads and different things. So can you explain that 60% to me a little bit, clarify it for me?
Sure. So Mayor, Trustee Lewis, Trustees, so the 60% permeability requirement is something that we normally require of residential development.
And that means
usually,
what? Yeah.
It's usually required after a subdivision has already been created and after roads have already been dedicated and created. So that 60% is excluding roads and general access.
Okay.
So if you had an acre or 10 acres and you had like an acre of which dedicated to roads, then you have 9 acres to build on, and you would be limited to 60% of that total area being permeable. So, sorry, I don't know that I said that right. But the idea is that the 60% permeability is a standard that is normally required, therefore it would still be required in this case, and it could overlap with the requirement for open space. So inherently, open space would probably be permeable, so that would already kind of suffice for that. But then also, in general, it just tends to prevent people from concreting their entire property or putting like a gigantic tennis court over their property when they don't have the area for it. So a similar kind of application would apply.
Okay, and so you're saying for the FAR calculation, you guys are initially recommending no bonus density from the FAR? In other words, if you have that 50,000 square feet, there's no density on that, regardless of how much you keep in open space.
Trustee Lewis, yes, that is correct. The idea there is that the quote-unquote density bonus is the opportunity to play with the floor area ratio allowed and to put more more dwellings on the property than you would typically be allowed to do so. Okay. So typically the 8,600 would be for one house, possibly one house plus a guest house, and then you can make a gigantic house, or you could have a barn, garage. The idea is that you could still do that, but you would then also be able to have them all as dwellings.
Okay. Thank you, Tiffany. All right. Let's go to the next ones. So can you explain a little bit more about the 30% requirement was the requirement in prior cluster housing language and is comparable to the open space areas created by setbacks. So I'm just trying to understand. Just the setbacks are creating 30% on an average lot?
So Mayor, Trustee Lewis, trustees, so yes and no. So the idea is that, yes, 30% open space did used to be the requirement for prior cluster housing ordinances. And also, when you have a square-shaped lot, and you apply our setbacks for various zones, all of our residential zones, A1, A2, A3, R2, and R3, they all average out to about 30%. You can't put a structure or pool there. So it isn't necessarily open space. It is space between properties that with the idea to create open space. However, you could put a driveway there. You can pave it. So it isn't necessarily open space. It is undeveloped space, and it isn't allowed to have a structure there. The difficulty, so that application is a little bit limited because it is for square-shaped properties, and most properties in Los Ranchos are rectangles. The difficulty in applying it across the rectangle shape is that there's a variety of lot sizes, and some properties are required to dedicate more open space, like have more area and open space than others, simply due to their proximity to ditches. We have a bigger setback for ditches, or if they have like a short front and back and wide sides, then they actually dedicate more compared to like the opposite scenario. So this is just kind of for simplicity's sake,
Yes.
It's about 30%.
And is this something that we would consider putting across every, A1 or R3 or, irregardless of the zoning on it? Or is that something that we would adjust per the type of zoning on that property?
So Trustee Lewis, Mayor, trustees, that's a good question that I would like your guys' input on, because at this point, we could limit it to something that is only allowed in certain zones. We could also limit it to something that's allowed in certain character areas. We have 3 character areas based on our 3 corridors. We could also say that it's allowed in any residential zone or even any zone in Los Ranchos, even if it was commercial or mixed use. The only thing that if we were to do something in that case, that we should require a minimum either area or number of properties in which to do this. Because obviously the scale of this kind of development would be a lot smaller on a group of R3 zoned properties than a group of A1 zoned properties.
Right.
But the idea is that it would still scale, and it could still be an option, but it would also just be a lot smaller.
Okay, thank you. My next one is the question you're asking us on, should open space be publicly accessible? I think you want to protect neighborhoods and make it aesthetically pleasing, but I live in a neighborhood that we had it publicly accessible, and we had a number of issues with all kinds of people crossing through our subdivision or our neighborhood, and ultimately we gated one side of the neighborhood, and so to me, that one I can just say from my standpoint and my experiences, I would leave it private access unless. And again, a developer is going to bring this site development plan in that we're going to look at and say, wow, that really makes sense. And wow, they're putting a community garden in there. Well, that's a whole different thing than here's just some open space in a subdivision. And so I can tell you from my standpoint for that, I would make it private unless it's in the subdivision or the site development plan. And I think that could be quite exciting. I've looked at a couple that have community gardens and stuff, and it's very exciting to what developers can do or will present to us. And my last comments are just on page 153. You have in here, an existing rule is amended to allow something different than the norm, or new guidelines are adopted. And I would really strongly suggest that we step back and try to create new guidelines, based on what we had before. I think one of the most desirable properties in the village is Prado de Guadalupe, that was built under this cluster housing rules that we had before. Unfortunately, special use got attached to it and it got taken out. But I think I like how you're proposing it, that they bring, here's a site development plan that we look at and that we like. And then if you make it a zone change, then that sort of protects neighborhoods too, because that means you're gonna have neighborhood involvement. And so I like that. And I like that, basing the time frame on the projects themselves. I think you guys are right on track there, because every project will be different. And so I think to give them a realistic time frame. But I like very much where you're headed with this. I think you've asked us some very good questions, but I think we need a lot more knowledge before we answer those questions. Quite honestly, I mean, a FAR-based approach versus, a dwelling-based approach, those are huge. And I'm sure not qualified at this time to answer those questions. So, but I do like where you're headed. I do think we should, when you talk about incentivizing smaller dwellings, part of that is to put a maximum square footage if somebody's going to do a cluster housing, so that we accomplish what we want to make them more affordable and hopefully attract more families and allow village residents to downsize and stay in the village. I think, luckily for you, that's all my questions at this time. I just think there's a whole lot of education that we need to go through and ask a lot of questions. And I think you've done a tremendous job putting this first step forward, and I hope all the trustees will ask a lot of questions. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Director Justice.
Okay, Trustee Pacheco.
Okay. I'd like to just start off with just making some comments. I mean, I think everybody, this is important to all of us. I know working on the master plan, this was big for me personally in just kind of listening to ideas that were out there. I feel like as a board of trustees, we need to keep a real open mind with regard to this. We've had, cluster housing projects in the village. I mean, we all know about them, but they haven't continued. There's a reason that developers are not doing cluster housing projects in the village. And I don't think it is us to be able to answer that. I mean, it's certainly not me. I don't have the experience to say, is it the cost? Is it, what is it? What is it going to take to make a cluster housing development work? And I think that's what we have to be flexible to hearing from developers. I think we need to have the developers bring us ideas. As Trustee Lewis said, we need to listen to those experts out there. And this is a whole new thing, the pilot project. That's what it is. It's a pilot project. It's not something that maybe we've done in the past, but it's something that we're going to do in the future. So my opinion is that we need to set minimal conditions and have ranges maybe spelled out to work within. as opposed to setting something in concrete. I don't want to tie ourselves up to something that isn't going to work. I think it would waste everybody's time if we're not keeping that open mind. And I think we can adjust our conditions based on what's feasible on the project. You know, just kind of based on the proposed locations. We don't know any of this yet. So I think that we just have to remain really open. I think we need to balance, as Trustee Lewis said, you know, the need for new homes while maintaining our beautiful village and, you know, what we all appreciate about it. And I think that we want a developer to balance the, you know, the cost of doing something like this. I mean, they're not going to come in here, in my opinion, and put a beautiful project together that is not going to be financially feasible. So I think that we need to, again, just kind of remain flexible there. Again, we can apply conditions to the pilot project that will not make the cluster housing a viable option. So we want to make sure we're not wasting our time. So I just wanted to make those comments on the front end. You know, I had questions too with regard to the density bonus, and I think that Tiffany did a great job in just kind of explaining those a little bit more so that we all have an understanding. I like the thought of considering density bonus because it does encourage the smaller homes, and I think that we have all heard from residents that they're done with the big houses, the majority of them. You know, people are looking for, again, as Trustee Lewis mentioned, places to downsize. This could be a great option for that. It will allow more people into the village, which I think we're all wanting to see. We want to see kids in the village again. We want to see our schools strive. And you know, we want to see what we all had when we first came here or had experienced. We don't want our village residents to leave. And I think that's important because a lot of us are aging. We are going to be looking for other options. I mean, these big properties that maybe some of us live on are not going to be, you know, what we can work with anymore. So I think that a cluster housing project, hopefully like one of the ones that the pilot project will take into consideration, will kind of give those options back to the village. Again, I think we just really need to rely on the developer to bring us a project that works. And not only, again, works for the village, but works for the developer. If it doesn't work financially for a developer, they're not going to do it. And we'll be stuck in the same place that we have been. With regard to open space, being either public or private, I have thoughts on that as well. I feel like a development needs to incorporate the beauty of the village into their development, but I don't necessarily feel like it needs to be open to the public. I think it visually needs to be open to the public. I mean, we don't want to lose, you know, cranes that we see in fields or birds that are flying seasonally. I mean, we want to continue to see and have access to the visual part of open space, but I don't necessarily feel it's a good idea to have the public kind of, you know, traipsing through a development. Again, I think it creates a lot of issues. You also asked the question, Director Justice, about other structures. And my opinion with a cluster housing development, I don't see how it can incorporate other structures. If we're talking more dense, it's going to be a little difficult, in my opinion, to add additional structures to that. So I would say that that probably is not, something that we can look at, but, certainly open to hearing others' comments about that. Water is the other issue that's huge in our community and in the state and in the country and in the world now, just becoming more and more of a concern. And I think that we need to, and the developer needs to really think about that with regard to what they're going to do on that open space. It's not like we can flood crops anymore like we once used to, but we need to look at alternatives to that. I mean, is it a xeriscape landscape? What is it? Something maybe that, I don't know, reuses water, that kind of thing. But I think we have to be really attuned to hearing what kind of options there are with regard to that. Just going back to the master plan, we worked really hard on this piece in terms of putting it in there to become just kind of, I don't want to say a test, but it really is that for our community. We wanted to welcome developers to bring their ideas and thoughts into these projects. And, we're not going to know until they're done. I mean, really. And that's the whole point is, did this project work? And do we want to do it again? But we're not going to know unless we work with the developers. And of course, with all of us adding in our 2 cents for sure. Again, there's a lot of input, I think, that needs to come not only from us, but from the developers. Allowing unconventional development, that's really what we're kind of asking here, is for a developer to come in and do something that's not been done before. So I'm hoping, again, that we can all just keep an open mind about that. I highlighted a lot of stuff, oh my gosh, but I'm not going to go through all that. Talked about all of that. I think that there wasn't a lot of questions, Tiffany, but it was just a lot of, I thought, ideas and insight, and a lot of the things that we talked about during the master planning process, in hopes that we can kind of pull it all together and do something that's going to work for our village, first of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pacheco. Trustee Riccabini.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to talk just general, just for a minute. One is that I think what we're looking at right now, unfortunately, is going to be limited. It's going to be limited. It's going to be going, gone at some point. And so the first comment that I'll have is that if we allow density, and then later we begin to change our either FAR per acre, go to half acres or whatever. What we don't want to end up with is even more density on this property down the road than we started with. That's something I always fear with this. So if I build a cluster housing and then our rules change in the future, now we can go ahead and build more on that, and now we've got a very dense next to semi-open. So that's just something to consider. The second, or another piece is that we're going to get what we want. What do we really want? I mean, if a developer can come in on 5 acres and put 5 1-acre plots, then why wouldn't we allow that same developer to put 5 houses clustered if that's what they feel like is going to work the best and leave more open space? Okay, so I don't know that we should limit or that we should put a maximum size on the house if it is in a cluster status like that. The public access thing, I completely disagree, because I think we open ourselves up to all kinds of liability and issues. If we require public access, then we're going to probably also be required to police it, to repair it, et cetera. So let's leave that up to the private owners, is what my point is there. The, you know, it might be interesting in like a cluster, like some townhomes, some beautiful patio townhomes with this beautiful acreage around them. This sounds wonderful, right? And why not allow that kind of density? And maybe what we end up with is 10 or 15 homes in cluster that are connected buildings in some way that offer a neighborhood with this expanded area. So those are just some thoughts there. I think that echoing with Sandra on the developers, I really think that we need to listen to our business people out there and our developers and what they want to build and what's popular. I think this is going to be ever changing, and so I want to make room and not be so rigid to where we can listen to them. The water thing, I didn't even really consider it until you mentioned it, but wouldn't it be horrible for this beautiful cluster to begin, and then we end up with a weed field over a few years? And so I don't know how we keep that from happening. And that's somewhat of a concern.
Million-dollar question.
Excuse me?
It's the million-dollar question.
It's the million-dollar question, right? So those are my comments, and I think you did a really good job in just kind of putting things out there. You're something else, and I really appreciate the work you put into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Riccobene. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please go to the podium, state your name and address.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and trustees. My name is Jim Strozier, and I'm a principal with Consensus Planning, and our address is 302 8th Street, Northwest, Albuquerque, 87102. And it's a pleasure to be back here. I did work a long time ago on the FAR program and for the mayor at that time, and worked on that committee, and I think we did some good work. So I'm working with a couple of developers, Scott Scheibor and Jim Long, that are interested in bringing forward a pilot project. So that's the reason I'm here, is I've been working with them, and I want to thank Administrator Simon and Director Justice for their accessibility. We've met with them a number of times, and we've had some great conversations and talking about this this approach. And so a couple of considerations. I really appreciate the comments that the trustees have provided this evening. I think you really are showing a lot of insight into some of the issues related to the challenges associated with this process. And so the first comment I would like to make is, and I think both Trustee Lewis and Trustee Pacheco mentioned this, maybe all of you, that to keep flexibility in mind, and this idea that to provide, associated with this idea of pilot projects, the opportunity for a developer to bring forward a project and present it and get your input, and if it makes sense, then you all let it go forward. If it doesn't, then you maybe send them back to the drawing board. But keeping that flexibility, I think, is critical related to this, and the idea that any of these projects is going to be site-specific in nature. And so what's going to work in one situation for one site isn't the same thing that's going to be appropriate in the other. And your master plan, your comprehensive plan recognizes that in your character areas. And so I think that's part of that flexibility, keeping it in mind. So in terms of the percentage, I would also urge you to allow that flexibility in what those requirements are, and not be so, not set things in stone. I mean, obviously you need to have some minimums. I think 20% would be a reasonable minimum amount of open space, and it could go above that, but that would be something that would allow a developer then to look at what makes sense and for that particular project. I really like the idea of the FAR bonus as opposed to density. And it sort of gets into that conversation about, providing, maybe there's maximum square footage of the homes, but that FAR allows for a lot of flexibility and creativity in how you put a project together and how you make sure that it makes financial sense for the developer, as well as provides the character and the characteristics that you all are looking for and did such a great job of communicating in your comprehensive plan and those character areas. And I would also echo, I think, with regard to the public access, I think it's important to have at least a portion of that open space visually accessible to the public, but not necessarily open to the public. And, and depending on, gets back to that site specific or the characteristics of a particular proposal. So if it is an open space that's designed to be, for instance, agriculture and wildlife habitat, so forage for the migratory birds. You might want to have, if there's a public sidewalk or trail next to that open space, you might have a little viewing platform that allows the public to go and look at the wildlife and take advantage of that. There's just so many different ways that could work. And so I think visual access to that open space is really important. And I took that out of your plan. I think that's important to you all, and those are the characteristics that I would urge you to consider moving forward. And with that, I just, once again, I really want to thank you all and the staff for taking a thoughtful approach to how to make this work. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them, but thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Okay. There's no one else in the audience, so I don't
Can I
need
ask
to
one
ask
more
anyone.
question?
Go right ahead, of
A
course.
point of clarification.
Sure.
We were talking about structure on open space. I got a little confused by what you said, and I thought maybe I'm misunderstanding it. Is that, it's not an additional structure on a property, is how I understand it. It's, if it's a community garden, then you allow a barn in that open space or a covered shelter for picnics and things like that. Am I understanding that correctly, or did I get off on the wrong track?
Yes, Mayor, Trustee Lewis, trustees. So the intent behind that question about the extra structures is assuming that they would be accessory structures for whatever kind of open space that's there. Would we want to allow that within that open space? Of course, it then becomes impervious area, but it also helps to support the activity that's going on there. And so I think the intent there is, the question there is, would we want to allow structures within the open space and not have them count against the developer? This counts towards your square footage, this takes away from the permeable requirement. Would we want to kind of waive that for any structures within the open space, to say that it's an accessory use, it enhances that, therefore it kind of counts, or even maybe it gives it a bonus?
So Trustee Lewis, I probably misunderstood that, that area of where you wrote that. So I would totally agree that, that could be used.
Maybe I misunderstood if it was talking about on properties with houses. Thank you for allowing that question.
Okay. So are there any other questions from anybody about this? Okay. Item 13 is trustee informal discussion. Roundtable discussion is informal. The Board of Trustees will take no official vote or other official action. Trustee Rael.
I have, excuse me, I have a few things here. First one, I would like to mention again, proposing that the village buy the northwest corner of Pueblo and 4th Street to provide a park for the kind of the gateway area, as well as for the people on the north end of the village, which they don't have a park that they can go to and enjoy. So I would really like to see that happen.
What corner was that again, Pablo?
Was that
What corner was that again?
the northwest corner of Fourth and El Pueblo?
Okay.
It's vacant, it's been vacant for a long time, and it's probably like 2.5 acres, I don't know exactly.
Is it for sale?
Huh?
Is it for sale?
I don't know. I mean, there's no for sale sign on it, but, I mean, I would like to see us try to at least have some discussion on possibly getting.
Okay.
The other thing that I've been thinking about is the $50 stipend that we get as trustees. I think we should do away with it or increase it to where it's meaningful. Right now, it's not, it's kind of a nuisance more than anything.
I happen to agree with you on that.
It's not, it's not worth it, in my opinion.
We're gonna deal with that later this year.
Okay. I brought this up before too, but I really would like to see that trunk out in front refurbished. It was donated by an artist of the village, and they spent a lot of time on it, and there's a lot of history behind it. Maybe some of the newer people don't know, but there is history, and it was part of the tree that was blocking the Montano crossing, and Mayor Chavez took a crew out there at like 5 in the morning or something and cut it down before they could stop him.
Right.
And so the village took that, and one of the artists did that with us. So we should take care of it, I think, in appreciation for what they did. And I'd like to say thank you to Keen and you for getting and Ann for getting the sign on Chavez and Osuna up. And I'd like to thank Fred for helping me with the homeless problem that we had the other day. And I think we should be talking more perhaps about how we handle homeless. Because there was one that camped out in my sidewalk, run in front of my house for a few days. And I feel sorry for him. I wish we could do something. And maybe there is something we can do, but take him to some place where they can spend the night or whatever. There's also another one that was camping out behind where the drugstore was in the field.
Right.
So thanks, Fred, for that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Rael. Trustee Lewis.
It's interesting, I've noticed that and I brought it up before. I think the city of Albuquerque is working very hard to move homeless, push them out, do whatever. And I think it's just something that's coming our way. And this week was the first time I've really seen. I mean, I've seen some on the ditch banks, but I think it's coming this way, and I think it's an issue we should get in front of rather than react to as it starts to happen more and more. And I think it's something that takes a whole lot of discussion and understanding and trying to figure out what our policy or procedures are going to be. And I would like to see it's something that we have on our schedule and start discussions on.
Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lewis. Trustee Pacheco.
I really just have one question, I guess. I've had some residents contact me with regard to speeding neighbors. And I'm not sure, they said they have tried to talk to the neighbors. They have, put signs out there to slow down, and this particular neighbor is not slowing down. And so I thought I would bring it up just to see what our policy is or what recourse they may have to slow down these speeders. So I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if we can even answer that now, but I thought I'd bring it up.
Is that on Rio Grande or where?
No, it's actually in Dietz.
Dietz Farm?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the problem is it's a cul-de-sac. So, they started to mention speed humps and that kind of thing. I don't think that would ever be an option for a cul-de-sac, but there you go. But again, it's just something that a resident brought up that I thought I would bring up as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you, staff and Mayor, for the great job on the budget, too.
I appreciate that very much. Trustee Riccabini.
Yes, I am going to bring this up, and that is, I was, over the last probably 4 or 5 months, I've received a lot of phone calls from residents concerning the winery.
Sure.
And as time went on, what I could say to residents was, I'm gonna have to wait till that comes in front of the trustees. And now, it's not gonna come in front of the trustees.
Not yet.
Not yet. But right now, it's
That's true.
gone.
Right.
And I think that as elected officials, it's our call to make policy decisions and make decisions about the way that things are move forward. We're elected to do that. That's in our responsibility to do that. And I don't believe, and when I went through my training in P&Z, it was very clear that our job was to go ahead and make a call based on policy as written. It was not our job to make call based on what we think was right. There was many times when I thought one way, but I had to make a call another way because that's what our job was. In my opinion, that did not happen with P&Z. We need to get a hold of this situation and get it corrected because people are going to stop moving their businesses here, okay? There's no way that we should ever defer, P&Z should defer something for 60 days. There is, I just am really disappointed in what has happened, and I'm hoping that going forward that we can train our P&Z to do their job. They serve the trustees, and Mayor, you name these people to that P&Z.
Right.
And so these are an important job, and I don't know how we ended up allowing this to happen. But they are not policy, they're not to be doing policy. It's up to us as elected officials to define policy. That's what I have to say. I'm really disappointed in this whole thing from legal standpoint to the P&Z, all the way across the board. So that's my comment, and that's it.
I appreciate it. So we're almost to adjournment. I would ask the trustees to stay right here for a couple of minutes so I can have Village Clerk Danielle Cedillo Molina take a picture of us. Okay? Is everybody okay with taking a picture tonight?
Glad I did my hair. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. It is 8:42. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Danielle, I'm going to give you my cell phone so that you can take this picture. Thank you. And we'll be done.